we saw a quick word about ratios because it was kind of interesting. Uh, here is This is all open data, so I'm going to show you some statistics behind the scenes, but it's open data, so I'm not showing you anything that's not publicly available. Let's see. Let me just share my screen real quick. Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the conversation. This is the Uber conversation that happened last summer. You can see that 1,600 people voted and only 100 commented. And this is what we see in every single conversation. It's 10 to 1. 10 people participate in agreeing and disagreeing with other people's comments and producing data and producing the opinion groups by voting than actually submit comments. And you can see like over 1,600 people on average they voted on like 30 comments each. Oh, hold on, let me. It still shows me as screen sharing, but Patrick lost me, so I'm going to restart it.
Oh.
Let's see. Patrick, do you have that back now?
Oh, okay. You know what? I'm not seeing it on mine, but if Bianca sees it, then it's probably getting recorded.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So what's interesting about those numbers is that an enormous amount of, if you look at like the activity, take a look at the number of comments that are submitted, 195, versus the total number of votes cast, which is about 30 votes per person for 1,600 people, which is 46,000 votes. 46,000 times that someone hit agree, disagree, or pass. That number is where the transformation is. The fact that we're engaging a whole new strata of citizen, they don't have something to say. They don't know the issues, but they can certainly score themselves on statements that are made by others. It's a much more accessible way for people to enter the consultation process, and we've demonstrated this over and over again. I'll show you the Airbnb conversation. Just a second. Has exactly the same. Yeah, this is even larger. The stats real quick here. In this one, 2,000 people voted. There was a lower number of average votes, but still 31,000 votes were cast. 200 people commented. Again, 2 to 1. 200 people commented, 2,000 people voted. Before this, there were something like 20 people or so, 20 to 30 people participating in the consultation process. And after this, the quality went up and it 10x'd the number. It like 10x'd and 100x'd the people participating, submitting their ideas and interacting with others' ideas. And so the numbers across all of these consultations were really strong. And you can see we show you a distribution of how many times people voted and some other stats as your conversation goes. But I just wanted to bring that up because the issue of it's a core issue that we should really talk about throughout the conversation tonight, which is like what population is being asked to come to consultation, and what are we expecting of them when we get there? And I think that to draw just a simple comparison, like in the States, okay, well, what I just demonstrated to you would be contrasted to like we're going to have them submit a comment, and we don't know when. Basically, they're commenting on every statement. They're being asked to generate a statement that is a response to tens or hundreds of pages of legalese. And that is markedly different than being asked to generate a single reaction to a single point. And that disaggregation of ideas and that disaggregation of actions means that someone can like come in while they're on the bus on their way to work from a link to hit a button a few times and produce data about where generally they are on all of these dimensions that have been created by the other people in the population. And then they can leave. And they can do that anonymously, or they can log in with social. And so the idea of reducing the friction, both in the mental energy that people have to do to get involved in the consultation, and the friction of what it means to be a participant meant that there was a huge uptick in 100x uptick in overall participation in the consultation. So that's a we don't other than having that number we have that number. Audrey tweeted that out, and we have that embedded on the Pol.is Gov lander. But I wanted to at least since we're recording this live, go a little bit more into detail about that, what that's meant, and kind of why we think that's happened on the platform, and like what that meant downstream was that there was more confidence that we had a representative sample of like a larger amount of people. We have a representative number of people. Generally the groups are represented. They may not be represented proportionally, but at least the ideas are out there. Mm-hmm. And the ideas from multiple populations have been entered into the discussion, have been reacted to, and so that's kind of one big idea. The other one that I wanted to respond to was regarding the civil servants, the relationship between civic tech, civil servants, and population, and how the civil servants piece is a frustration there from what Patrick said. So the issue that we saw this on most markedly was online liquor sales. Online liquor sales was blocked in Taiwan for 6 years, and the V-Taiwan process cracked it and got to legislation in like 3 months. And the reason that happened was that when they ran the Pol.is conversation upstream, in other words, before all of the face-to-face stuff, they were able to find consensus among the previously, warring parties that had each locked up the ministries. The ministries couldn't act because the people were talking past each other. When the people stopped talking past each other, then the ministries were freed up to act, and then things kind of decalcified and things could move on. And that was a very exciting kind of interplay, and really, to make it very concrete, the civil society, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, that kind of interest group, was saying statements like these. We don't want to allow online liquor sales. We don't want to make it easier for people to get liquor. We want to focus on prevention and prevention programs. We're not doing that enough. And so that was like generally the platform. The other side was saying things like, this is not going to make it any easier for people to get it than walking to the corner store. This is not going to change things, in that way. And what's very interesting is that these two groups completely agreed on these fundamental points. They had been talking past each other for years, but the civil society groups that were saying, they agreed that they did not think it was going to be any easier. They didn't actually think it was going to increase alcoholism. They did want to focus on treatment programs. The other side completely agreed that there needed to be more focus on treatment programs. There had been previously no point at which they said those things and mutually agreed on those things. And so when some thousands of people got together, and it was clear that both groups were in the space, and it was also clear that both groups fundamentally agreed on those points, it was a breakthrough for the whole issue. And that freed up the ministries to actually take concrete action and move forward on that. And that was a huge. I see that as actually probably that was, I think, the most exciting thing. And the outcome was attacked on Facebook. There was someone who had said like, oh, the person who did the consultation doesn't even drink, and it was like basically just like being sarcastic and snippy about the whole process. People from both sides of the issue jumped on them and said like, everything you're saying has been brought up in the consultation. The consultation was completely fair, and like people from both sides both attacked people who were attacking the process on Facebook, and that was like extraordinary because even though they disagreed fundamentally, they moved forward in a way that all sides could get around, I guess maybe it's also particularly we have a lot of talking past each other in the States. That's like the fundamental thing. When someone says like, oh, we should support military families, it's like that's not a controversial issue. It's not like they're staking their identity. A whole group of people is staking their identity on this. And on the other side, Peter Thiel gets applauded for being a gay American, and it's like we need to uphold gay rights, and maybe that's not such a controversial issue anymore on the right. But we don't really have an opportunity for people to kind of like connect or actually agree. There's no place to say I agree with that. And so that's kind of like what we're trying to make explicit, is to give people an opportunity to do that. So I'm sorry that was long. I just wanted to respond. Talking about there did actually happen, and it was very encouraging. So Patrick, if either of you have any questions on that, that's cool. I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, I can go on to talking about platform stuff. And
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
down.
no, I think platform stuff would be amazing, even if just for rewatch value after this. Because that you're talking about all these things, I'm like visualizing it because I spent some time digging through and trying to understand the UI and knowing how what you're saying applies to it. But just for anyone else watching, it probably would help to have the basis.
Let's do it. Okay, so here's what Pol.is is and how it works. So I'm going to go to a conversation here that we use for demos, and I'm going to paste the link in here for you. And so what I'd like you to do is, and both of you, if you would do this along with me, you've probably heard of the concussion crisis in the United States.
Football?
Yeah, football.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So it's a big, hairy, multidimensional issue, and so we've put this out in our social network and put it on our lander for a little while to get people in, so that I could, we would have a nice multidimensional data set to show. And so here it is. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and take maybe 2 minutes here. If you're watching at home, you can click on the link and do this too, and go ahead and agree or disagree at past with statements that have been written by others, and you'll see in the visualization below that your dot is going to move closer towards people that voted like you did. So as you agree and disagree and pass on statements above, in the visualization below, your dot, which is the blue dot, and if you sign in with social, you'll see your face in that dot, which you should do, and I recommend, because then you'll get a real sense of it. Your dot will move closer towards the group and eventually pop into a group that voted like you are voting. Generally, not on every issue, but in a general sense, and that's where the AI, that's where the brain of Pol.is is. The data set that this produces, since this is up here, it'll get a little bit wonky, since you can skip over this if it's too technical. But what's happening here, and I'll draw it. Here's a blank piece of paper. So what you have here is you have every comment, and you have every comment along the top by every person. Okay, so you have all of these comments by all of these people, and there are something like 50 comments in the conversation, and there are something like, I don't know, 400 people in the conversation. So you have a matrix that goes 50 in this direction and 400 in this direction. And at any given slot, any participant may agree, disagree, or pass with any one of these statements. And so this is what we call a highly dimensional space. There's a huge number of combinations of how that matrix could be filled in. And that's generally the complexity of trying to go to the movies with friends. If you go, you and one other friend, you have 2 agreements. If you go with 3 people, right, you have this person, and this person. You have 3 agreements. If you have 4, you now have, it's geometrically more complex, right? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then if you add it, you don't have 4 agreements. You actually have 6. And then if you go to, 5 people, you have a geometrically more complex set of agreements that have to happen. Does this make sense? Yeah. That as you increase the complexity of the matrix, of that matrix that I just showed you, of what all the possible comments are. Think of it like movies. Every possible movie, we're going to ask 3,000 people what movie they want to go see. It's all the movies on Netflix, by every single person, and we're going to try to agree on a movie, right? And so this is a very, very complicated task for humans. And so you've got all these statements, and you've got all these people, and what we're doing is the computers are good at looking at matrices and producing meaning, and that's the math. That's what I'll limit the explanation to that, but like what we work on is what Pol.is does is to produce that matrix in real time, to analyze that matrix in real time, and to produce groups from that matrix in real time of people that tend to vote similarly. And so what you're seeing in the groups, and now I'll show you what that means. And so if you've voted now a few times, you'll maybe have popped into a group. And I'll.
Do you want to screen share? Do you want to screen share yours, Colin?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. Yeah. Here we go. So I'll reduce this so that it's okay. So show this group in the upper right. Sorry, no, lower left. Lower right. Lower right is good. This is a good place to start. So this group says in the years ahead, football is going to have a recruiting problem. They overwhelmingly agreed with that statement. 85% of this thinks that football is going to have a recruiting problem. The other groups you can see, about half disagreed, about 75% disagreed. If you click on the next statement, overwhelmingly this group says, I'm not going to let my kids play. This group in the upper right disagrees. Seems like they are going to let their kids play. We look at another statement. I feel troubled by poorer folks willing to take risks for our own enjoyment. They feel troubled about this morally. The group in the upper right disagrees for some reason, but they're not, they don't really think that that's true. And it's interesting because that kind of correlates with allowing their kids to play. Like the idea is the group in the lower right has this thesis you kind of see emerging that I'm not going to let my kids play, so therefore, and I'm maybe middle upper class, so then therefore maybe other parents won't. I've seen stats on Pop Warner enrollment declining. Maybe there's going to be a socioeconomic component to willingness to play football, and I'm kind of uncomfortable with that. And then this group, unsurprisingly maybe, overwhelmingly disagreed with the statement, I played football in high school. And you can see in the upper left that this group generally agreed they played football in high school. The group in the upper right did disagree with that as well. And so let's take a look at the group on the left. We can kind of guess where they are. The group on the left, it seems likely that they are the football players. Okay, yeah, football's too big to fail, right? They're overwhelmingly likely to agree with that. The NFL has shown it's taking the issue seriously. That was not agreed on the other groups, right? The football players are like, football's too big to fail. The NFL's taking it seriously. Let's move on and let them take care of it, right? I'm still going to watch football, overwhelmingly agreed. I grew up watching football. I played football in high school. So the group on the left is like, there's nothing to see here, move on, right? This is the kind of minimize and discount group. I played it, it was good. Good things aren't bad, and I'm, we can move on. Now in the upper right, they are going to let their kids play. They don't think the danger is like smoking. They disagree that football is going to have a recruiting problem. So this is like the disagree group. Those are the statements that differentiated them. We can see, they are going to let their kids. They didn't play when they were a kid, but they are going to let their kids play, and that's kind of this unique cluster in the upper right. And so, but given all of that, given that there is real difference, if you click majority opinion, you can see we should still be able to engage in things with downsides if we understand what the downsides are. 75% of the entire conversation agreed with that statement, which is, I think that's kind of like, that's a pretty, I think it's pretty human. It's like, well, okay, is the person going in as a conscious participant? We should have the information out there, but if they still make the choice, they make the choice. Also, pretty overwhelmingly, generally agree that 70% that safety equipment isn't going to fix this. That it's going to be harmful to people. It's going to be injury prone. And we're not necessarily going to get over this. That the monetary incentives are going to continue to attract people. That was generally agreed on. That a third of NFL players developing cognitive problems resulting from brain damage is a big deal. That was generally agreed on, despite everything else. Hopefully the NFL will work to prevent injuries. So you can see there are statements that do cross-cut all of these groups, even though there are distinct groups with really interesting opinions. They are out in consultation saying, like, okay, it seems like in terms of personal responsibility, there is a strong personal responsibility axis that runs through all of these groups, and can thread through all that safety equipment isn't going to fix this. We need to account for the fact that this is going to continue to be injury prone, that some people are going to choose to continue to play, and that they should be allowed to continue to play. and that we really need to try to make it safer while allowing people to make personal choices. Seems to be kind of this theme. What I'll emphasize is that all of the statements that are in here either were comments that I found online. I found maybe like 10, 15 comments at the beginning, and put into the conversation anonymously by using seed comment. That's something really important that you should do if you're starting a conversation. You should seed comments, because when someone shows up, it'll just be an empty box. And as we know, most people don't. Most people want to vote. They don't want to comment. And so, if there's 10, 15 things for them to agree on, the first people hitting the conversation will be able to produce data for you, and that's good. So go find some comments on the internet or statements exist, or identity statements like I'm male, I'm female, I work downtown, I work in the suburbs, whatever is appropriate to the theme of the discussion, and then some opinions like I'm generally in favor of this proposal. Put some stuff in there people will say, and then at least some people will hold those opinions. They won't have to restate them, and you'll kind of get that. You'll get some stuff in there. But the statements then, the rest of the statements, were created by people putting in their statements. And so this is kind of another way to think of this. One way to think of this is a survey that is created by the people taking it. And that's I think that's a really interesting way to think of it, because if we think of how we survey populations, we generally don't. These are some very interesting statements. We might have asked, we might have thought to ask people, did you play football in high school? I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a really interesting thing that came out, that someone submitted, I played football in high school. Someone put it in. They thought it would be interesting. And I think it's interesting that they thought it was interesting and relevant. And they kind of, maybe like they wanted to know where everyone stood on that. And so to surface that information in the population, just so they could become more conscious, someone dumped that in. And then as everyone agreed on it, it revealed that in the population. And it's kind of neat to kind of see that demographic data as people are willing to share it. They can pass, of course. But if they are willing to share it, then whatever the population itself is interested in and whatever they think is relevant is part of what emerges. And that might be very surprising. What emerges may be very surprising to the powers that be. And the agenda setting power being in the population then is quite powerful, because they decide what the axes of consideration are. And the other thing I'll emphasize, besides the fact that all the dimensions were created by people, is that you can do this without the visualization. You can do this where all of the where people don't see this. All that's necessary to using Pol.is is having statements here. They don't even have to come from people. They could just be a bunch of statements that are put in. Could be like a bunch of statements from people in government that you want to see what their reaction is. All you really need is this little box right here that does the agree, disagree, pass. That's it. And then the other, but as part of that, this happens because of people agreeing and disagreeing, passing. The visualization, the insights, like all of this stuff isn't something you have to do to get anything from it. Kind of happens magically as the conversation unfolds, and it happens in real time, so everyone can watch the conversation kind of move and take shape, and like the bubbles will pop around and and change and kind of come together and then move apart. And in the future, we will be doing more with this. We just need to get people. We're really focusing on distribution now rather than adding features, because it's kind of to a point where like it's a next step, but there are a lot of next steps to this. And so I also thought maybe it would be interesting, since this is being recorded, to talk a little bit about where we think this is going. Is that okay? Would that be?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So I haven't really talked about this much in public yet, but it's exciting to talk about. One thing. Oh, hold on. It just said I'm going to restart the screen share. It just said Patrick ended my presentation. So fine, Patrick. Okay. So one thing that we're going to do is allow people to drill down into these groups. So when you click on a group, it's like, okay, fine, you identified two groups. You identified liberals and conservatives, right? Here's another conversation. Here's a conversation that happened in Taiwan. It was 3,000 people. It's on the death penalty in Taiwan. And okay, fine, you identified pro and against. And maybe that's not, maybe that's like overall not that interesting, right? Because we kind of knew there was pro and against. And so if this is the pro group and this is the against group, then maybe what we really want next is to be able to click into this and then drill down and see like what are the subgroups that exist within pro and what are the subgroups that exist within anti. So that is one place that we think it would be interesting to take this interface to allow people to kind of dig down. And I would say that the original motivation for this is to allow people to become more conscious of the group, because in consultation, that's really why you show up in person, right? Like you want the people to modify their own opinions and kind of see like, oh, shoot, like, okay, that's not controversial. I thought that would be controversial, and it's not. And I thought everybody disagreed with me, they don't. Or I thought everybody agreed with me, but they don't. Or, oh, wow, I kind of learned something about that group that I didn't know much about before. And those are insights that we'd like people to have. We think they're peaceful, peacemaking insights, and that's why we visualized it. We wanted people to be able to kind of see where each other were, that in a longer timeline. Are you familiar with liquid democracy or the concepts of liquid at all? Okay, so what we're really what we're about to try, possibly over this winter, maybe as late as next spring, is since this is going advancing in Taiwan and it's going to move across the government more widely. We have it's been kind of it's been on our minds to have a profile page. So for every person that votes in a conversation, it's like, here are the conversations I voted in. Here's how I voted. Here are people that voted like this person across multiple conversations. And then if I have a profile page, who voted like I did across many conversations? Who am I ideologically like on agricultural policy? Who am I ideologically like on foreign policy? And like to kind of take these things, and then because it's a recommender engine, right, it clusters you with people that are like you ideologically on a lot of dimensions with enough data to be able to say, would you like this? Would you like to defer your vote to this person when you're not voting? And then that is a very like baby step into saying we're going to gather this in a hierarchy. We have a hierarchy in place eventually where we can say, okay, I'm going to defer my vote in agricultural policy to someone that I know that follows that really closely, and he can have my agricultural token, whatever it is. However you kind of divvy up those topics or those dimensions, there is a logical step from what we're doing here to deferring your voting power or your agreement and disagreement power, because at least what you're saying, kind of in a stochastically at least, at least statistically, what you're saying is I agree with this statement, and there are like maybe 200 people who have given me their voting power. They are pretty likely to agree with this also. And so then if you can do that, and as that scales up, then you can kind of have these very well-informed people carry a little bit more weight in consultation. And so that is one. So first is allowing to kind of see subgroups. The second is allowing to see like people who vote like you, so that you can give them your voting power on issues that you feel less qualified to talk about. And then the third is that we're planning on doing crowd moderation, so to take the burden off of the moderators. So if you disagree with a statement, or if you pass unsure will become something like other, like flag for abuse or spam, or just say unsure. And then if you disagree, it'll say something like, it'll give you 3 other options related to that. It'll be like not factual, or etc., or emotional or whatever, or irrational. If you agree, it'll be like important or like mundane, something. These are not the actual words, but something to the effect of that will help surface important comments, take away spam, and try to get some of the burden of curation onto the people in the groups. And really, where we think that can go is to have groups moderate themselves, in the same way that it's rather inappropriate for a white moderator on the CNN website to be moderating a conversation among Black Lives Matter activists. It's really not appropriate for them to make the assessment like this doesn't belong, this statement doesn't belong, and this statement does. to try to bring the curation power out of the hands of the government into the hands of the population as well, because that's one of the sticking points right now is like the government has the power to moderate comment in and out. And so that is an overview of what it is and what we think it can become if people pick it up and it continues to get used. We're excited to build that stuff if it does get used, if it does continue to get used. And we're really excited about some of those ideas. And so I'm glad to have an opportunity to share. And so let me unshare for just a second and I'm going to go into the admin dash for this conversation and screen share that. Okay, so you'll see topic and description. You'll see an opportunity to add seed comments. You can turn the visualization on and off. You can turn the comment. You can allow them to comment or not. You have to allow them to vote. There's no conversation without that. You can turn the social sharing buttons on and off. You can turn the prompts to log in off if you want to make it anonymous and enforce that. You can make the background, the button color pink if you want. This is the important one though. Strict moderation is the thing that if you're going to run a conversation, you really have to know about. If you click this on, that means that no comments will be shown unless you manually approve them. And that's good if you have a contested thing and there's angry people and you don't want hateful speech to get in at all. If you turn it off, then you can moderate things out still, but they'll be shown to people while they are in the queue. It'll go right from that person's keyboard to everyone. And so if that's scary, then turn that on and and then be on top of it. So you can see comments here. Let's go to accepted here. You can see here are the comments. You can click reject on any of them. You can see when it was created, how many times it's been voted on. And then if you go to seed, this is where you can add comments for participants to vote on anonymously. And you can do that in configure as well. You can do that right here. It's the same thing. It's just important, so we did it twice. We're about to rebuild the. At some point in the next few months, we will make the configure screen probably turn into a wizard. We just haven't gotten to it yet. There's a lot going on right now. But seed comment is where you can put a bunch of statements in that other people will see, and you can also seed a tweet. If you want to, you can paste in a tweet URL. It'll pull it into the conversation and pull in that user's avatar. So you can pull in like Barack Obama's tweet. It'll put him in the visualization, and then he'll move around into the group that agreed with that statement. And so he'll move around the visualization as if he was in it. And so you can put like politician statements or their tweets in. You could put like 30 politicians' tweets in, and then like let people vote on what they said, and then kind of see how it comes out. That's also a very alternative way to use it. We're trying to make this really flexible, but it's a lot of this stuff is going to be power user because starting it, you kind of have to invest, in what we're doing right now to like feel really confident in starting these. And we're trying to like make it really powerful to do and curate and start and get information from, and really, really easy to use. And so, thanks for taking the time to invest, in kind of getting your head around it. Data export, you can dump all the data that we have, all of the data we collect, you can dump to CSV, but host it on an open data thing so that people can see the comments, the votes, all of it. We also produce a text summary, and this is exactly what you just saw, the general consensus, the different groups. Here's group one, right? It's too big to fail. I grew up playing football. Same thing, but in text form. The idea with this eventually is that we can email, for instance, the text summary to politicians who it can just show up in their inbox. A conversation happens automatically. Maybe you make a rule 6 months later, 12 months later, 24 months later, a Pol.is conversation happens automatically, scripted on Facebook ads, goes out, collects a whole bunch of opinions, is crowd moderated, and then the output of it shows up in the politician's inbox without anybody having done anything. That's part of the vision here is like automated feedback. And we haven't really had an opportunity to deploy automated feedback yet, but I wrote a piece which I will show. I'm going to share it. Hold on, just a second. Automating. Yeah, so here are my thoughts on that, and I'll paste that into chat, and you can add that below. But this is an idea that I think could be really powerful, but it's down the road. I mean, we're still just trying to get people to do it once and manually. But like, my idea really is that because we can produce a text summary, well, like, the data should come from the people who are relevant to the people who need to hear it. And we can query every forest ranger in the country. We can query 3,000 teachers every month based on how some rule is performing, and then just have that show up in the inboxes of the DOE without them having to like run an in-person town hall, kind of get involved, mucking about. I still think that, and so like, what I hope it makes, like, for people, Bianca, like you, who are doing this, is to just give you these tools to say, like, look, we're just going to fire feedback at you. We're going to fire really high resolution feedback at you all the time, and it's going to be way less expensive and way more frequent. But there will still be so many points of contact for setup, and like population identification is a huge one, and like kind of again where it slots into all these different processes. Like, for instance, maybe a conversation happens automatically, and then we automatically message and identify 3 or 4 people who are going to, from each group, who are willing to show up over Google Hangouts with you, and like email them all a link, schedule a time automatically with everybody, and then like the first time a human touches it, where the first time is like Bianca, sets it up, does population identification and Facebook ads. The whole thing runs automatically 6 months later, and then it like schedules a date with all of them, and you puts it on all of your calendars and says like, and then you're all in there, and you've been, a day beforehand, you've been emailed this text summary of like kind of where everybody was, and then you can kind of like go through that, get a transcript of what the what the in-person drill down was over Google Hangouts, and then take that transcript and email that to them as well. And then you've done that, and you've done it like maybe 40 times a year rather than 4. And so scaling this up and making it possible to do this with larger populations more frequently is a really big part of what we're hoping for, maybe in over a couple 2-3 years from now. Hopefully we have a couple examples of that happening. You can moderate the visualization if you have a senator show up, or a congressman or a mayor show up, and you want to make sure that they're shown. You can feature them so that everyone will see that they are in a group and that they're participating. You can also hide them if like we voted, I voted in the conversation, right? So I want to hide like a brand, hide a person. Someone shows up with a bunch of Twitter followers, you want to feature them. And then that is just about it. The last thing I'll show you is like starting it. You're going to land here when you start. Click New. It exists. So I'll say like, hi there, Toronto. I'll submit that as a comment. Go to Toronto, and then I'll go to share and embed. I'll click the link. It exists. I'll send that to you, and then that's it. Like that's setting up a conversation. That's starting one and sending it out. And so I just sent you the link, and like, so in terms of like sending it out and getting rapid feedback, if some thousands of people got that link, came in, voted on 10 comments that were already there, submitted a comment if they had an idea, great. If you want to have it embedded on your site, then you won't see this header. You won't see, it will just show up. Just this part right here will show up on your site, and you can embed it just like you would Discuss or another commenting platform on your site. That's what I got.